Circe warned me first. She told me there were creatures who lived among the rocks, singers whose voice carried farther than the wind, farther than reason. She said no man had ever heard their song and sailed away unchanged. So I prepared. I stopped the ears of my crew with wax, softening it in the sun, pressing it deep until silence sealed them off from the world. But for myself, I ordered something else. I told them to bind me upright against the mast, tighter with every struggle, no matter what I begged, no matter what I promised. Then we sailed on, and when we came close, they sang. They did not threaten, they did not shout. They called my name. They promised knowledge, stories of Troy, of pain already lived, of truths no one else would ever tell me. They said they knew everything that had been and everything that would be. And I wept. I begged my men to free me. I commanded it. They only bound me tighter and rowed harder until the voices faded and we passed beyond them. Only then did they lose me. Only then did I breathe again. Welcome to the Atlas of the Uncanny, a collection of stories, myths, and strange creatures drawn from the edges of maps and the corners of memory. This is not a place of answers, but of echoes of creatures half-remembered, histories whispered, and wonders that refuse to stay buried. And welcome to the second episode. If you listened to the first one, thank you very much. I hope you will enjoy this one as well. Today we are diving into the deep seas, meeting a creature that has been in human imagination for almost as long as their stories themselves. So settle in, and whatever you do, listen closely. The narration we started with is an adapted abstract from the Odyssey, in the 1900 translation by Samuel Butler, recounting the moment when Odysseus, or Ulysses, encounters the sirens. So let me ask you the first question. Did you know that sirens and mermaids are not the same creature? This is something that when I learned kind of blew my mind, especially because in Italian, to my knowledge, we only have one word to describe them both, which is sirena. And sirena, it's related to the ancient version, the Greek version, and to the more modern version, which we will see in a bit. Did you know how sirens were imagined in ancient Greece? Since we mentioned is different. So even though today they are often confused and put together, they began as very different beings. Only later they merged and they became one in the common imagination. So let's take a closer look at both and try not to drift too deep into the waters. So, what if I tell you that sirens have nothing to do with the fish tailed figures we imagine today? Imagine that they were birds with women faces. I'm going to give you a moment here because I can see your mind being blown right now. They had no connection to fish at all, even though they were said to dwell near Antemoessa, an island traditionally placed close to the Strait of Scylla and Charybdis, a region already crowded and famous in mythology for its monsters that were once beautiful nymphs. In Greek mythology, the Strait of Scylla and Charybdis is a deadly passage guarded by two monsters on opposite sides. On one side lurks Scylla, a many-headed creature who snatches sailors from passing ships. On the other waits Charybdis, a vast whirlpool that swallows entire vessels. Sailors cannot avoid both. Steering away from one means drifting closer to the other. Actually, if you want to know more about Scylla and Circe, the witch that warned Odysseus not to go too close to the monsters, you should really read the book Circe by Madeline Miller. It's an amazing book. I devoured it. It was very entertaining, very good, and I feel like it's a good recommendation. Anyway, back to us. All in all, choosing Scylla over Charybdis, it's an impossible choice because you are going to be destroyed anyway. It's not about good and evil, but about two kinds of destruction, where survival means accepting loss. It feels only fitting that the sirens would dwell near such a passage. Antenoessa, the island on which they reside, was white with bones of the eaten sailors, men lured by the sirens' beautiful voice. According to the legends and myths, the sirens would hide among the rocks, revealing only their beautiful faces. They did not merely sing, they offered knowledge of the underworld ruled by Hades, of truths no human was meant to hear. This forbidden wisdom, delivered in voices of impossible sweetness, led many sailors to leap from their ships and dash themselves against the rocks, where they were devoured by the bird bodied creatures they glimpsed only as they died. If it were not for Circe's warning, as we said above, Odysseus would have met the same fate. And Circe, again, read the book. It's really good. And Circe, it's a really misunderstood witch, a really misunderstood character, maybe one of my favorite in Greek mythology. Anyway, back to us. If Circe didn't warn Odysseus, he would have met the same fate. Instead, he sealed his companion's ears with wax and ordered himself bound to the ship's mainmast, choosing to hear the forbidden truth without surrendering to it. And this episode with the sirens just shows this aspect of Odysseus. Of course, he wasn't a saint. Again, read the book. What is really surprising is that sirens don't force anything. They don't drag sailors from their ship or tear them apart with claws. The danger is entirely voluntary. The song only works if you listen, and the listening is a choice. In that way, sirens are among the most unsettling creatures in Greek mythology. They respect human agencies just enough to destroy it. The men who died at their rocks are not overpowered. They are convinced. They believe that knowing more is worth any cost, even their own lives. And perhaps that is why sirens linger so powerfully in our imagination, not as monsters of violence, but as mirrors of our own curiosity, whispering that some truths are worth everything. That's about it for sirens. I don't have much more to add. Let me know if you knew about this part of the story, and let me know if you know more, because that would be interesting. So, what about the mermaids? And how did we end up blending these creatures into one? These very different creatures, I might add, into one. To understand that, let's again talk about mermaids first. Let's see who they are, where they are, what they do. And chances are you know far less than you think. One of the earliest stories resembling a mermaid myth comes from ancient Mesopotamia. Imagine over 3,000 years ago. It centers on the Assyrian goddess Atargatis. I think that's the pronunciation. When I'm in doubt, I just read it how it's written, and I hope it will work out. Anyway, Atargatis was a powerful deity of fertility and protection. Storytellers says she fell in love with a shepherd named Hadad, whom she married. They got married, and one day she accidentally caused his death. We don't know how, I didn't find how she caused his death, but she was grieving and she was desperate. She fled to a lake, attempting either to drown herself to be reunited with her lover or to take the form of a fish. However, she was a goddess after all, so the water was not powerful enough to conceal her divine beauty. She was transformed from the waist down, her lower half extending into a scaled fish like tail. While scholars debate how historically grounded this story truly is, many folklorists consider Atargatis a mythic ancestor of later mermaid traditions. And those traditions are everywhere. Not for nothing, this is called the Atlas of the Uncanny, because you can find creatures all over the world. You have the Slavic rusalka, the Germanic nix, of course, the Irish merrow, and the African mamiwata. Cultures across the world tell stories of water spirits who entice, unsettle, and play with human emotions. Here, of course, I'm not going to talk about mermaids from all across the globe, but I've selected a couple, maybe three, and I'm going to start with one very interesting one coming from Brazilian folklore, the Yara, also known as Mãe d'Água, Lady Mother of Water. This is a water-dwelling beauty whom fishermen are prone to fall prey to. According to 18th century sources, she is a long haired woman who enchant men by night, and those who succumb die, drowned by passion. Folklore also blamed disappearance of men on the Yara, who lure them singing in the indigenous language. The hair and eye color differs depending on the tradition in various regions. According to the tale of the Manaus tribe, she has hair of the color of the pau d'arco tree's flower, which is kind of a greenish variety. It's a variety of green. And she had pink skin. While, on the other hand, she is black haired according to some. Other commentators insist Yara is a beautiful white woman who lives in a river, golden haired and blue eyed, though the blonde blue eyed image was not attested until after the mid 19th century. To the best knowledge of Camara Cascudo. Cascudo was an end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century, well, let's say 20th century because he was born in 1898, so not much of 19th century. He was an anthropologist and a folklorist, and in his early writing, he contended that though the Yara was rooted in two indigenous beings, the water devil Ipupiara and the Cobra Grande, he also saw the combining of the Portuguese lore of the enchanted Mora, who was a dark-skinned woman. The Yara became increasingly regarded as a woman fish. It is often argued that the legends of the Yara became alive around the 18th century, and they were born from the indigenous myth of the Ipupiara among the Tupinamba people. The Ipupiara is actually a very interesting figure because, contrary to what we normally would think a mermaid is, a female, or a woman, the Ipupiara was originally conceived as a male water dweller, which is very interesting. He carried fishermen to the bottom of the ocean, devouring their mouths, nose, fingertips, and genitals. European writers during the Age of Exploration disseminated the myth, but Gandavo, who was a Portuguese chronicler from the 16th century, including an illustration in the Histories of Brazil of the Ipupiara with female breasts. And of course, let the European change the male into a female. After this, also the Jesuit Cardim wrote that the Hippopiara was a female and that looked like women with long hair. Though in the case of Gandavo, it was somewhat vague, this female resemblance. Cardim, of course, as a Jesuit does, injected Christian opinion of relegating the role of emasculating men to the female kind. Because that's what women do. They emasculate men. And just to be clear, that was irony. It's not true. We don't emasculate men, not normally. Another example of mermaids around the world from pretty much the other side of it comes from Korea. Of course, Korea is a peninsula and has three sides by the sea, so it was bound to have mermaid stories. And there's quite a lot of it. In some villages near the sea, of course, there are mysterious stories about mermaids. Mermaids in Korea have features just like humans. In Donggabaek Island of Busan, there is a tale of Princess Hwangok from Naranda, a mythical undersea kingdom of mermaids. Another tale concerns a mermaid named Sinjike, who warned fishermen of impending storms by singing and throwing rocks into the sea from Geomun Island. The island's residents believed her to be a goddess of the sea, and that she could predict the weather. So she was quite the opposite of what mermaids are usually believed to be, creatures that lure men just to eat them or to drown them. Actually, you may also notice the difference between sirens and mermaids in that mermaids do not always kill the men that they lure. But we will say more about this later. Another tale is the tale of Nangan, coming from Pyongyang in North Korea. One day, a fisherman named Lee Jin-soo went to the Dragon Palace and spent the day enjoying himself. Upon his departure, he received a mermaid, a dead mermaid, which was said to grant eternal youth and longevity if eaten. Suspicious of it, Lee hid it away without eating it. But his daughter, Nangan, ate it. She obtained rare and unchanging beauty, but was never blessed with a marriage or children, and we know how important they were at the time. At the age of 300, Nangan climbed the hill Morambong and went missing. There is a theory that this Korean legend of Nangan was transmitted to Japan and became the origin of the Yaobikuni folk tale. Yaobikuni is a famous ningyo, which means half woman and half fish fabulous creature. Legend concerns the Yaobikuni, who is said to have partaken of the flesh of a merfolk and attained miraculous longevity and lived for centuries. It is not discernible whether the flesh was a female or a male, but a couple of translators call it flesh of a mermaid in one book, but merely a strange fish with a human face in another book. So we don't know. What we do know is that apparently eating a mermaid gives you longevity, uncanny beauty, and you can live for centuries. We can tell from these tales that mermaids are fluid and mobile. They can move around, they can swim, they can wander, they can fall in love. They mostly regret falling in love. They change and they are very much like water, fluid, moving. Always flowing. Sirens, on the other hand, we saw it in the beginning, they remain fixed and unmoving. They cannot show themselves because they would scare people for some reason. So they remain hidden under the rocks and they actually lured people to go to them, while mermaids most of the time move to go towards them. Sirens represent forbidden knowledge. And to find forbidden knowledge, you have to look for it. Mermaids, on the other hand, symbolize longing, transformation, and at times also loss. I mean, they look pretty different, right? We saw a lot of differences, not only physical, but also in their philosophy of life, let's say. So, how would it happen that they melt into one fishy creature? The short, simple answer could be laziness. Everything in this world happens because people are lazy, or doesn't happen because people are lazy. I'm one of the first lazy person that I know of. But it doesn't seem very historically accurate, so let's try to break it down a little bit better. Let's say that part of the answer lies where everything starts, in the Middle Ages. As sirens and mermaids both became symbols of the danger of the sea, their stories and appearances began to blur in European folklore. This blending was likely influenced by earlier Middle Eastern and Greek aquatic deities, such as the above mentioned Atargatis, or for example the Greek Triton of the Nereids, who already possessed hybrid forms. Shared themes of seduction and peril made the two figures easy to confuse. And of course, along came Christian moral interpretation. Whatever we talk about, there is always a point where the Christian moral interpretation comes along. And in medieval Christian imagery, the mermaid became a symbol of vanity, of temptation, often shown in many paintings holding a mirror or a comb, embodying fears surrounding the association with vanity and the danger of, you guessed it, female allure. And of course, this was reflecting a change in societal views of female sexuality. Over time, these moralized images replaced fully the older mythic meanings. In the 13th century, the writer Richard de Fournival, I guess my French is very bad, recorded three kinds of sirens, two of which were actually half woman and half fish. This also would help to explain why sirens and mermaids became interchangeable, let's say, in Renaissance. Both were consistently associated with fertility, with seduction, and with the dangers of sexual encounters. And people really did believe in their existence. During the fantastic age, well, fantastic not for everyone, of great explorations and discoveries, tales of mermaids and sirens were carried by travelers from sea to land. And sightings are recorded by sailors from the Middle Ages right through the 18th century. In 1608, explorer Henry Hudson wrote that on one morning, one of our company, looking overboard, saw a mermaid, reportedly with the tail of a porpoise and long dark hair. If you don't know what a porpoise is, please go Google it because it's not a tail that you would imagine on a mermaid. During the Renaissance, cosmographers often marked unexplored waters with the phrase hic sunt sirenae, which means here be sirens. As mermaids often represent the mysterious unknown, it won't come as a surprise that anyone who managed to get their hands on one was eager to show it off in a spectacle and to turn the public's fascination to their own financial gain. Which brings us to one of the strangest chapters in this story, the Fiji Mermaid. So, what if I say, this is the greatest show? Maybe, just maybe, if you saw the movie The Greatest Showman, you know that I'm talking about P.T. Barnum. In the movie, P.T. Barnum appears like very cute man, full of life, wanting to work and to give dignity to pariahs and to different people. But in reality, P.T. Barnum was maybe one of the worst person at the time. He was not charming, not compassionate. He was a pioneer of capitalism. He built his fame by turning deliberate deceptions, curiosities, and human, let's say, oddities into mass entertainment, shaping modern advertising, celebrity culture, and the art of public illusion. And this story is part of this illusion that he created. In 1842, P.T. Barnum displayed what he claimed was a genuine mermaid at his American Museum in New York. The creature was said to have been caught near the Fiji island and purchased by a Boston sea captain named Samuel Barrett Eads. It was half humanoid, half fish, and it was deeply unsettling. What should have been a beautiful mermaid was in fact a shriveled, snarling creature that didn't look anything like what we think when we think about mermaids. And I'm thinking the Little Mermaid. In reality, as we said, this was an illusion. It was a taxidermy hoax. The torso was the one of a monkey, and it was so on a tail of a fish. Barnum knew exactly what he was doing. Through planted newspaper stories and carefully staged mystery, he turned revulsion into profit. Thousands of people paid to see this creature, at least the skeleton of this creature, even as doubts spread. The original specimen was likely destroyed in the fire that consumed Barnum's museum in 1865. And I would say, good riddance, we don't need to see this now. I will post a picture of this on my Instagram, but man, it's not a good look. But, you know, back then, as now, the grotesque has kind of an irresistible appeal. And if it didn't, maybe you wouldn't be here listening to this podcast. And there is a pattern here, it's not accidental. Sirens kill with sound. Mermaids enchant with appearance. And the Fiji Mermaid succeeds through spectacle, but also scares with her awful appearance. Across centuries, the method changes, but the mechanism remains the same. Humans believe what moves them most deeply. A voice can feel intimate and truthful. An image can feel undeniable. A physical object behind glass can feel like proof. And we are living in the age of AI, of fake news. If we don't know that, who knows? Who knows better than us? Whether sung from rocks, glimpsed through waves, or stitched together and displayed under gaslight, the power lies not in the creature itself, in a video, in a picture, or in a news. The power is the human desire to believe, to fill the unknown with meaning, even when that meaning is dangerous or false. And since we are talking about today's days, modern times, what are mermaids today? If I think of mermaids, I'm not afraid of danger and crossing boundaries. I actually see beauty. I see beauty in the fluidity, in the flowing, in the freedom that they represent. Mermaids are now seen in general as archetypes of free, untamed women who embrace their sexuality and sensuality without conforming to societal expectations. They embody a wild grace that inspires breaking free from conventional roles. Their hybrid nature, half human, half fish, makes them powerful symbols of transformation, blending different aspects of existence, navigating between the known and unknown worlds. There is no wonder that mermaids have been embraced by the transgender community and also by the queer community. They are a symbol of otherness and gender fluidity, challenging rigid social constructs of identity and expression. So now let me leave you with a question. If you were Odysseus, would you ask to be tied to the mast? Would you like to know? Would you risk hearing the song, trusting restraint to save you? Would you want the knowledge that comes with it? Or would you choose silence? Knowing the truth can be burdening, can be really hard. And I'm asking these questions because, myths like this, they endure not because they offer answers, but because they ask us the same question again and again. How much do we really want to know? And what are we willing to lose to find out? And so we close today's page of the Atlas of the Uncanny. Thank you for exploring with me. Remember, stories like this don't end when the telling stops. They linger, they follow, they wait to be recognized. If you enjoy this journey, consider subscribing, leaving a review, leaving 5 stars, or sharing the show with a fellow wanderer of the strange. Also, you can follow the Instagram, the Atlas of the Uncanny, and we are now also on TikTok. Again, the Atlas of the Uncanny. Until next time, mind the shadows, question the familiar, and never assume you know the whole map, because the uncanny is never far away.